I think it was, that moment of courage that I had, and I called my mother and I told her that I can't, I'm not paying the fee for the admission, and I'm going to pursue this career as full time. I remember my friends, they were, there in the corner and they were like, don't do this. This is not for you. Sometimes, of course, people, they don't analyze their failures and they miss out on, deducing important learnings from it. So the least that we should be doing is not do the third one, at least not create problems for them, right? If you're not doing anything.
Hello and welcome to InferTalks, a podcast where I put you in the room with some of the biggest thought leaders and change makers from around the world. My guest today is a special one who will be speaking about the future of motion design's industry, as well as his own successful journey into creating a successful venture. My guest today is the CEO and founder of MotionQ, Mr. Osama Khabab. Osama, welcome to InferTalks.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
All right, Osama, let's go ahead and start this conversation. My very first question is, how did you really end up creating a successful venture like MotionQ? I'm sure there must have been a journey of 1,000 steps, but where did that very first step really start? Where did you really start your journey? And what was that one critical step that helped you move in that direction?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And of course, I have to go back a few years. I was, if I talk about, my early days when I was in my school, I was never a bright student, but and I had, very average scores in my matriculation. However, of course, you always have that pressure from your parents that, you have to be a great student and you have to land in a great university, right? So my mom always wanted me to be an electrical engineer, and specifically from UET, right? So I started working hard, in my college and, ended up in my university in UET, and that was, a dream come true for, mainly, for my parents, but also, of course.
But how difficult is it, like, to be able to get to that position where you're able to meet the expectations of your parents, and when it's so much of a struggle for you as a person?
That is true. Of course, there's a lot of things that you have to face. There's the societal pressure. There's, in our culture, there's a lot of pressure from, your family and your relatives, right? And I guess, at the end of the day, as a person, if you're able to take on that pressure and deliver, I think it helps you in a lot of different ways. So, for example, when I started, working hard on my studies, when I look back at it now, it definitely has helped me, shape my career in motion design as well, because I took certain skills from there, such as hard work, patience, going at it over and over again. So it was, definitely a lot of hard work. And then you need some people to inspire you. I think for me, when I was in college, there was a specific physics teacher. And I think the way he used to teach us, I think inspired me a lot. And I think that really helped me take studies more seriously. And I started, doing my bachelor's eventually from UET. And then as the story goes, while I was doing bachelor's, I was also doing some freelancing. So I always consider myself as a creative person. And I used to, have fun playing around with Photoshop, Illustrator back in the day. And when I was in university, I was doing some of that freelance work on a very, small scale. And I think the turning point for me was when I finished my graduation. And at that point, of course, there was a period where I was doing freelancing, but I was doing it from home. And there's, again, that pressure that starts building of expectations like, okay, you've done electrical engineering, you've spent 4 years. Now what? You got to get a good job or you got to continue your studies. So there was a point where I was just doing freelancing and I had to make a decision. So again, the pressure got to me and I was like, okay, let's do masters now and continue the education, because I tried giving interview in a couple of different companies. But since I got to the university, but I wasn't, again, putting too much effort within, in my electrical engineering subjects. So I, gave a couple of interviews, but not so successful. So I thought, okay, let's continue doing masters. So I applied again to, our university. And of course, I got the admission. And I remember the day I went to the university, it was I think, the deadline for, payment of your dues. So I went there, I was with my friends, and I was a little bit confused. Like, I was like, okay, I'm starting this journey again, 2 years of education while I'm doing this thing on the side. And I remember my friends, they were, there in the corner, and they were like, don't do this. This is not for you. Since you have, a side thing that's going on, focus on that. And I think it was, that moment of courage that I had. And I called my mother and I told her that I can't, I'm not paying the fee for the admission, and I'm going to pursue this career as full time. So, it's funny, like those small moments, how they can change your life. But I think it was that moment for me where I found the courage that I think I found my calling, like, this continued career path in electrical engineering may not be the best fit for me. If I've, done, if I have studied that for 4 years, does not mean that I have to continue that for the rest of my life. Yeah.
But Osama, how is it like for, say, someone who's probably trained to be an electrical engineer, or anyone who's probably pursuing a different profession and ends up eventually, with the passage of time, deciding that they're probably fit or probably really good at something else? How is it like to sort of make that switch, you be able to adjust in that new role, when in fact your primary training was all meant to do was entirely something else? Do you often get to hear, probably say remarks, or, even at the outset, did you have to cope with a lot of things or remarks coming from different people that perhaps this is not your field? Why are you trying to go or venture into something which you really do not have a formal education in which you do not happen to have, probably certificates or a diploma in, etc. The kind of typical things that you would get to hear. But how was it for you, like, to sort of convince yourself, all right, this is what I did in terms of my education, but this is something else I'm going to pursue as my bread and butter?
Yeah. So I think people go through different, times in their lives, and there's different circumstances. And I think for me, it was just, perfect timing, where I definitely found my support in, from my family. My brother was a big support during that time. I think it all comes down to being self-aware. So if you feel that you have that personality that can, for example, in my case, build a business, and you feel that, you have it in you, and people who actually care about you and give you the right kind of advice, believe in you, then I think you have to take the leap at the end of the day. There's no easy answer to this. I just feel like, when it's that moment when you feel like, it's the right time to jump, you have to take that leap. And that was for me as well.
So if, the next question that comes to my mind is that, of course, along the way, you would have ended up coming up with a good number of, say, clients, or say you must have done a certain number of gigs to come to that conclusion. Now is the time, probably, I need to start with something. But before you did that, what are the kind of skill sets that you really honed first to finally come to that decision? All right, now I'm going to go ahead and start something like Motion Cube.
Yeah. So in my opinion, in my experience, you will never be fully ready to commit to start, running a business. It's always that, you start something and then you figure out things along the way. I think when you keep preparing to make that move, it will probably be a bit too late. And for me as well, I think, skills like, for example, building a brand, how to set up a sales team, how to handle the finance of the business, hiring, culture, all those things, I did not, for example, join any company in the creative space. So I had no idea how to build a business. But for me, it all, came from experience. Start hiring, start, finding the right kind of people. And now when you have the right kind of people, how do you bring more sales in? So I would say that, overall, if you feel that you have the passion, and if you have the right kind of skill set, and definitely have a lot of patience, because you do need a lot of patience when you're running business, then you may never feel fully prepared to start one. But, I think the best way is that you move forward, and then the kind of experience that you will get while executing, you can never match that with any knowledge that you may try to acquire, online, let's say, or from other people.
Yeah, from your own words, taking a cue from your own words, you yourself happen to be someone who says that luck is not the only thing that plays a major factor in producing results or bringing about success. What was exactly in your own case? Was it the luck itself, or was it a combination of your skill sets and hard work that brought about that success?
Yeah, so luck, of course, I find it a very fascinating topic. And to me, the way that I look at it is, when people say that you get, this person got lucky, in most cases, they attempted that particular thing many times. And for example, 5 times, 6 times, 10 times, when they keep, trying at something, and eventually one of those times, is when it all works out, then it appears to be luck. So in my mind, or the way that I perceive things, is that the more, opportunities that you give yourself, the more chances that you take, just increases, the chances of getting lucky.
So when you speak of opportunities, is it about creating the kind of opportunities that would allow you to consistently do a certain thing over a period of time in a certain avenue, where your chances of success would eventually increase because you're doing something quite consistently, and since your hand is getting better at it, eventually you're likely to do well at it? Is that what you're suggesting?
Absolutely. I mean, as you must have heard that there's either winning or there's learning. So every time that you fail, of course, there's learning that you have to take. I think sometimes, of course, people, they don't analyze their failures, and they miss out on, deducing important learnings from it. So as long as you keep learning from the mistakes that you've made, it just makes you a more, stronger person, a more insightful person, who has more data to work around challenges. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So, Usama, what are the essential things that you really did, say, from making that big transition? You said, I need to put in place these 5 things before I start my company, MotionQ.
Yeah, so as I said before, there was not much.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, in the early days when I took the leap, and, my brother was a great support in that. We just decided one day that, okay, I think we have decent amount of, business coming in from these freelance projects. And I think I can hire, let's say, 1 or 2 people. That was it. That was kind of the preparation that I had at that point. And we started looking at office spaces. And I remember when I went to one of these suppliers to buy our systems, he could feel that I was very nervous. And he said that to me, that it seems like you're starting a business and you feel nervous. So there was definitely, that feeling.
And how long ago was this?
This was about 7 to 8 years ago.
The year is going to be 2017?
Yeah, around that time, I would say. Yeah.
Right. So if somebody is listening, did you have enough money in your kitty already that you were quite confident that perhaps I need to have a separate office space instead of hiring people remotely to do the kind of work that they would have to for you?
I would say that I think I had about 2 or 3 months of savings that I could run the operations of the business.
Okay.
And by operations, basically, I mean buying, let's say, 2 or 3 systems.
Right.
I had, I think, 2 or 3 people that we had hired initially.
But did you have enough clients to say, at least, to sort of survive for, say, at least a quarter or 4 months or 5 months?
I don't think so. And honestly, if you ask any entrepreneur who's running a services business specifically, that's always the challenge. That's the challenge that, at this point, even as a business, we face. Like, how do you, manage the amount of resources that you have? How do you continue that payroll? and balance that with business, coming in. So again, it's the risk that you have to take. At that point, I of course did not have, let's say 6 months or 1 year of business that I could feel confident about. So yeah.
So it was like burning of boats for you, if I could put it very aptly, right? So, Osama, if you speak of, say, other fellow freelancers, what do you think do they fail to get wrong or perhaps get the essential things right before, say, if they want to make their next big move, they're unable to sort of, get that checked off their checklist?
Yeah, so it's important, question that you asked, and honestly, for this podcast, I wanted to discuss this particular aspect. So, Osama, if you look at our freelance workforce in Pakistan, we have about 3 million freelancers, which is considered, one of the highest number, worldwide. There's, I think, India probably or Bangladesh. That's, side by side, but there's a huge freelance workforce. Now, when you compare that with, IT companies, there are probably very few that are notable in the space right now. Compare that to our neighbors, India, of course, there's huge IT giants. And when you compare the revenues, there's, a huge difference. So even if you don't compare, the size of the companies, just the matter of fact that there's not enough IT companies in Pakistan is a fact, and it's a concerning aspect. So my, I guess, goal right now, or one of the things that I want to convey to people who are, freelancers, who are doing freelancing at this point, is start thinking about, starting your business. I think one of the things that, we have in our culture, I guess, or I guess just, the aspect of getting comfortable. So I think a lot of freelancers, when they start making decent amount of money and they're living a good, decent life, they feel like, they fulfill the purpose. And I think definitely one should have a bigger purpose in life. You should think about making a bigger impact, for yourself, for the community around you, for Pakistan, as a country. So I would definitely encourage freelancers who are contemplating, who are considering, who've thought about it, to, whether they should start, their own businesses, whether they should start their own IT companies. I would 100%, encourage them to take that step. And if you feel unprepared, that's fine. That's the fun part of it. As long as you are self-aware and you know that, you can build a business and it's something that you'll enjoy, go for it. So I would not bring up things like, as in your question, you mentioned what are those check boxes that somebody needs to, check to make sure that, they're ready. I think we've gone too much in that direction where people are a bit too skeptical. They're a bit too conscious, I guess, and they're not making those, big steps where they think bigger than, what they currently have. So I would definitely encourage, people, freelancers, especially in the creative space, of course, coming from the creative side of things.
But what do you think is perhaps the biggest impediment that's holding them back from making that next move? Is it, say, reluctance on their part? Is it that too much of overthinking and skepticism that really goes into making a decision like that? Or perhaps it's genuinely a lacking of resources that they might not have, or perhaps this very fear that, what if I fail? What is it exactly like? Is it, any one particular factor that really stands out in this list, or perhaps it's a combination of all of these factors that sort of holds them back?
No, definitely, I would say a combination of different factors. One of the things that I mentioned is that sometimes people fall in the comfort zone where they feel like, they've found their stable spot and, they're making good enough money. Right. And, why start a business and take on that additional responsibility? Right. So that's one. The resources part could be another. But I think one of the key aspects is lack of leadership and resources that, people here in Pakistan can relate to, right? So for example, if I talk about myself, I followed people like, Gary Vee, Alex Hormozy, these guys in, the business space. But I think we don't have leaders in the IT industry that are able to, or that are offering help in that way. That, people, freelancers, for example, this huge workforce, they have certain challenges that are, specific to them, to the Pakistani audience, which, they cannot relate to, people that are from the West. So, for example, if I'm still in this position when I'm having a conversation with a prospective client, when they know that, I'm from Pakistan, immediately they have this stereotypical thinking that, okay, maybe it's cheap labor. And, so they start thinking in that way. So how do you overcome those challenges, right? How do you sell your services? How do you build a brand, as a business owner in Pakistan? So I believe if, people from the IT industry, they come forward and they're transparent into, how they built their businesses, talk about how they built their sales team, I think it would just benefit the overall community.
So how, let's say, for example, let's very much pick this example where you said that, you have a potential client who's approaching you and probably stereotypically thinks, oh, I've probably been able to secure myself a very good deal. I probably don't need to have someone who might charge a lot. Then how do you sort of convince them that, you shouldn't really be expecting a typical price tag on the kind of work that we do? So how do you sort of build that case that this is the amount that we're going to charge, and it's not going to be the kind of amount that you would typically find, from Pakistani freelancers or say Pakistani companies? And how do they sort of end up becoming more comfortable in terms of, say, securing services from a company like yours?
Right. So there's a few different factors. And of course, with experience come a lot of learning. So in my experience, I've talked to, of course, hundreds of clients over the years. There's a few different things. So number one would be, of course, the value that you're providing, right? And how relevant your services are to the client's need compared to other companies. So I always recommend and suggest people in this space, if they are, let's say, a graphic designer, if they're an illustrator, if they're an animator, just, find your niche and go narrow and find your specific target audience that you want to go after. So when a client is speaking to you, you can, find and share examples that relate very closely to what they're looking for. And they don't need to be, many examples, but if you can find, let's say, 2 or 3 good examples of work that resemble very closely to what their requirements are, then, automatically they will be inclined towards working with you. So that's one, just having good product that fits the market very well. And then, of course, other factors like, how good you're able to present yourself, general sales skills, how to, for example, confront the price objection, how do you, get over that, other, factors that come along with it. So those are certain skills, and I think we may need a full session for that to discuss, to go into detail about all those things. But in my experience, it just all comes with experience. I've also, worked with a couple of salespeople that have trained me as well. So there's a lot of things that, slowly you acquire, but you just have to start working on those things.
So when you speak of niche areas itself, you did freelancing also, and now you're running a company. What is it that sort of stands out quite commonly in these two experiences? Were you doing niche work when you were a freelancer, and you're also doing, or probably are venturing into specific areas when you're also running your organization as well?
Yeah. So I would say, for example, freelancers who are listening to this podcast, who are in the beginning stages of their business, what I would recommend is that they can keep it broad in the beginning, because you want to be targeting different markets and see that which market you're able to provide most value to. And then when you get, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects, and you understand that, okay, this market is the most valuable for me, then you have to go narrow and start building your website, start building your brand around offering services for that particular market. I think for me, again, as I said before, I've learned from my mistakes. I think when we started, we were offering video services, then we started offering design services. So we were going broad, and then soon I realized that that's not the best way to go about things, because the more narrow you are, the more your clients or prospective clients are being convinced that you're the right person for the job. So I would say start broad, offer services that are closely, I guess, related to each other. And then when you find your market, then you have to go narrow.
Now, Usama, your company has worked for multiple clients, quite big names: Microsoft, JetBlue, GE, Slack. But I'm sure that big breakthrough might have actually come from one client. Who was that first client? If you can really help us, if you can really sort of recall that and share this with our clients, who was that very first client that sort of provided you with that big breakthrough?
So I think one of our big breaks initially was Johnson & Johnson. We worked with them, over many years. And I think with time, we got some of the other clients, like you mentioned. Microsoft currently is, one of our very strong partners. But honestly, you work with some of these clients, but it's not the determining factor for a new big client to hire you just because you worked with some other clients. It's a new day every day, and you have to give it your best every single day, as they call it. Your last bet is your best bet, right? So you have to keep going at it. And I would say that working with a particular client opened doors for many other clients. It's just constant struggle, day in and day out. And you have to keep presenting yourself as a brand that can help big companies, that has the value that can deliver to big corporations. So yes, a lot of hard work.
Now let's take a step back, and I want you to put your freelancer hat on. I want to ask you, what are some of the most high demand skills that are sort of helping a lot of freelancers earn quite a big buck?
Yeah.
And especially someone who's probably work in motion designs and animations. What kind of skills would you really stress on future or budding freelancers to really focus on?
Yeah. Of course, artificial intelligence is huge right now, and it's definitely reshaping everything, every industry. But at the same time, I would say that, first just find the kind of skill that, that you feel close to, and start building that. And then, these technologies you can add on top of those skills. So for example, if you're a good motion designer and you're good at, of course, motion design, and you have the right kind of eye, and you work with, a few good clients, at that point, of course, you can start exploring these new techs that could just assist you in doing your job better. So I wouldn't say that, start following a trend or a technology just because it's, it's all over the place. Find your calling, find your passion, and follow that, and then add, technologies to help you with your job.
Okay, but there's one thing that I've really seen with a lot of freelancers. What really happens is that they would actually start focusing on one particular, say, skill set, and they end up really missing out on a lot of good opportunities that they might have, or that they could potentially tap into. What do you think that they should really be doing at the outset of their careers? Should they be, say, focusing on one particular niche, and then at the same time, with respect to their core area, they should also have some, auxiliary or, say, secondary skill sets in their armament to be able to tap into those say associated or, say, very close opportunities, which more or less are quite centered on their core skill area?
Yeah, definitely. So in my experience, what I've seen is that there's two qualities that you got to have as a freelancer. Number one is, of course, you got to be good at what you do, your main skill. And then the number two is you got to be a good salesperson. I've seen a lot of successful freelancers who are not that great at the first halves. They're not the best, let's say, graphic designer or illustrator out there, but they're really, really good at selling their skills. And then I've seen a lot of people who are unsuccessful at freelancing that are, the other way around, right? So I would say that acquire those soft skills, sales, how do you talk to customers? How do you present your services? How well put together is your website? So I think those are some of the areas that I would recommend and suggest freelancers to look into. I think right now, one of the things that I see, one of the problems that I see is that most freelancers are focused just on, let's say, these couple of platforms like Upwork and Fiverr. And that's definitely, limiting their growth because definitely. So for instance, right now, if you look at Upwork or Fiverr, the market is very saturated, right? And there are certain, criteria that, for example, Upwork has that as a freelancer you have to follow. And the market, of course, is very competitive, which is fine. But at the same time, for example, if, as a freelancer, if you're looking to build a brand, you have to start looking outside. You're not improving your sales skills. You're not looking to build your brand. You're not, tapping into the power of social media. So I would say, learn those skills, especially cold outreach. So for example, if you found your target audience, like, okay, these are the group of people that I want to, offer my services. Right now, what, freelancers are doing, they're looking at the jobs that are being posted and they're applying to those. But let's look at the other side of things. That particular market that you want to tap into, why can't you approach them directly?
So what you're suggesting is like the old school way of reaching out to companies and then just letting them know that you're in the business and these are the kind of services that you're offering.
Yeah, I would not categorize that as old school. I think it's an evergreen approach. I think, of course, big businesses are built on sales team that do cold outreach, that reach out to their prospects. Again, now there's a lot of little details that you get better as you start executing. So, for example, if you're trying to do outreach and you're simply just telling that how good you are and this is my work, that's one approach, and it feels very self-centered, right? What's a better approach is you do a bit of research on your target, right? And you see that what are the areas that you could actually assist them in, and then write them a personalized message where you are exactly identifying the area that you are helping with and how you can solve that particular problem. So I would say that, working on this side of thing where, you're figuring out how do you actually approach prospects instead of just relying on freelancing platforms is a great skill that people should be looking to develop.
So what kind of approach has really worked in your experience in terms of bringing you more clients?
So in our experience in the last few years, we found the target market that works for us. So businesses that are in the SaaS space, that are in the tech space, and are looking for example, video services around social media marketing, around building their brand, their presence on the website. So we've honed in on that, and we've specifically tailored our messaging for those specific audiences, and we're doing cold outreach that's getting a good decent return for us. So yeah.
And how do you make sure that any potential client would want to retain your services over a longer period of time?
Yeah, that's a huge factor in building a business, because you cannot always be looking to get new clients. And getting new clients is far more difficult than retaining clients, because those clients, they've seen your work, and if you've done a good job, there's less effort that you need to put in to convert those. So in our case, when we finish working on a project, there's definitely upsell that we try and do on our part, just identify areas that we can assist those clients,
right,
and build long-term relationships. That's a huge part, and I think a lot of business owners, they miss that trick where they're not converting enough people into long-term customers.
So what do you really put into your, say, business communication, or say your outreach to clients that sort of helps you retain that relationship? What is it that you exactly do, or MotionQ does?
Yeah, so for us, we explore a few different avenues. I think in this day and age, every brand needs consistent social media content. So that's one area that, we frequently pitch our clients that, okay, this is, a video project, for example, that we've done for you, but your social presence could be much more better if there's consistent, ongoing content that you are posting, and we can help you assist with that. So that's one. There's, if we talk about the website of things for any brand, in this day and age, when people visit their website, they can read through content, but if they have a quick video that explains what they do, and then subsequently on their other pages of the website, if they have other videos that assist them with their customer journey, that can help improve, the conversions that they get through the website. So this may get a little bit technical, but we definitely, pitch this to our clients that you've done this one video, but the kind of world that we're living in, video is very popular. That's how people engage. That's how they consume content. So any, communication that you're looking to develop for your company, you have to consider video first as part of that communication.
Is there any particular experience that you could probably share with our audience where you think like, that was one particular business deal where I probably was successful in, cracking that formula of success? What that particular experience was for you and for your company?
So I think recently, in recent past, when we started our sales efforts, I think one of our big successes was Loom. I think some of the people in the tech space would know the startup is pretty, popular. So we reached out to them and, told them where they're lacking in terms of their marketing. And this is specifically what we can do for them. And, securing that big name for a project for us through cold campaigns, just gave us the confirmation that this approach works. So I think that was a successful venture for us.
Right. And now, of course, people like yourself who are getting impacted in either good or bad ways, specifically by the kind of things that actually take place in the internet itself, because I'm presuming a lot of the work that you do, or perhaps your deliverables, are actually given to clients by way of course, internet. So how is your business really affected by, say, disruptions in internet itself or internet connectivity? What's the kind of challenge that people like you, businesses like you, really have to experience, and what's the cost that has to be brought on the table, as a result of these disruptions?
Absolutely. I mean, different businesses have their different challenges when it comes to internet shutdowns. Some businesses have backups, some don't. When we talk about, for example, X shutting down or Twitter shutting down, I think government needs to realize that there are companies that do social media marketing for their clients. And if a particular platform is down, that becomes a huge problem, right? So there's, I think, definitely education that needs to happen over there in that particular aspect. And generally, of course, everything that we're doing is through the internet, right? So sharing files, as you said, and all those different, day-to-day operations. So internet, of course, is a huge part of, the business. So such interruptions, of course, they do pose a challenge. But I would say, generally, if I look at policy making, if I just see, the current situation, there's three ways that, the government or the institutions can affect, businesses or IT companies. There's one where, you do nothing. You let the businesses run the way that they're doing. The second is you help them. The third is you create problems for them. So the least that we should be doing is not do the third one, at least not create problems for them, right? If you're not doing anything,
just let them be.
Just let them be, right? And then if we talk about the other side of the spectrum, if you want to help them, I would say, of course, there's a few things. I mean, there's the tax side of things. There's tax benefits that, the government could provide. There's, payment gateways. That's another, of course, problem.
So what are the kind of solutions that, if the government is to do something, what are the kind of solutions that you really expect from their side to at least facilitate and enable businesses like yourself?
I think there's definitely, as I said before, I would love for the education system to be, reshaped a little. And I don't think that, if we're copying the same kind of education system from the West and trying to apply it here, it will be, 100% successful, because as Pakistani business owners, we have our own challenges, right? So, for example, soft skills are a huge part of success of any business owner, right? So, I think if we can integrate those specific elements that are created to help specifically, Pakistani business owners or people who are looking to start their businesses. So if we can integrate those, subjects, those learnings within the education system, I think that will make a huge impact. So I think that's one way that we can look into things, is just, relook things in terms of the education system and see how we can make it more customized for ourselves.
Right. And before we conclude, let me ask you, are there any things that you're planning to do yourself in terms of improving the skill sets of, say, budding freelancers, or perhaps that want to have some mentoring from people like yourself who've already been able to raise up successful ventures?
No, definitely. I mean, of course, again, I'm still struggling. I'm still in the phase where I'm still figuring out things. And honestly, this journey never ends. So my time, of course, is limited, but I do see the big problems that, as a country we're facing, and the kind of growth that we should be having at this point. We're not there yet, right? So as someone who's figured out, let's say building a business in this current economy, definitely want to share my thoughts, my experience, my insights with people who can relate to me. So what I'm looking to do is just, share content on my personal, Instagram and LinkedIn, and share with folks, who I can possibly help. And I think that's at least something that, all business owners that are running big, successful IT companies, they should start doing, is be transparent, not talk a bit just on the surface, but really get into the weeds. Like, actually, how did you build a sales team? How was the marketing handled? How was, the whole thing built? So I think those kind of experiences, when shared, they can make a huge impact.
Usama, thank you so much for coming over today and sharing your journey and sharing your experiences with us today and with our audiences.
Thank you so much, Osama. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Mr. Osama Khabab. Our team works very hard to make this work possible, and it would mean the world to us if you could like and share our content. And if you'd like to stay informed about our upcoming podcasts and other work, please hit the bell icon.